Maya pressed her inhaler to her lips for the third time that morning, the familiar metallic taste flooding her mouth as she struggled to breathe normally. Buddy's golden fur seemed to be everywhere, coating the couch where she needed to study, drifting through the air vents, clinging to her school clothes despite her best efforts to keep her belongings sealed in plastic bags. Maya, can you drive Emma to Buddy's training class? Mom called from the kitchen, not waiting for an answer. I'm running late for my book club. Maya looked at her AP chemistry homework spread across the dining table, then at her sister Emma, who was sprawling on the living room floor, letting Buddy lick her face while she giggled. The sight made Maya's chest tighten, not from affection, but from the familiar constriction in her airways. I have SAT prep in an hour, Maya replied, checking her inhaler's remaining doses. Nearly empty again. You can do that later. Emma's already late, and you know how anxious Buddy gets when his routine changes. Maya bit back her response. When had Buddy's anxiety become more important than her college preparation? When had Emma's convenience outweighed Maya's academic commitments? She couldn't pinpoint the exact moment, but somewhere in the 2 years since Buddy had arrived as Emma's emotional support for starting high school, the family's center of gravity had shifted completely. She grabbed her keys, watching Emma struggle to attach Buddy's designer leather leash, a $200 purchase that had replaced Maya's desk lamp fund. Her old lamp had broken 3 months ago, leaving her to study by harsh overhead lighting that gave her headaches. But Buddy needed a leash that matched his collar, apparently. During the 20-minute drive to the training facility, Emma chattered about Buddy's progress while the dog panted heavily in the back seat, his breath fogging the windows Maya had cracked open for air. Maya's phone buzzed with a reminder about her college application deadlines. 3 schools required additional essays, and she'd planned to work on them during her SAT prep time. Did you know Buddy can now distinguish between 15 different commands? Emma was saying. The trainer says he's exceptionally intelligent for his breed. Maya nodded absently, mentally calculating. Training classes, $150 per month. Buddy's organic grain-free food, $80 per month. Monthly grooming, $120. Toys, treats, and accessories, roughly $100. Her family was spending over $450 monthly on a dog, while Maya rationed her asthma medication because their insurance had switched to a higher copay plan. At the training center, Maya watched through the observation window as other families worked with their pets. Normal families, where the dog was an addition to their lives, not the axis around which everything revolved. She pulled out her phone to work on college essays, but Emma kept interrupting to point out Buddy's achievements. Look, he's doing the stay command. Perfectly! Maya forced a smile, remembering last month when she'd asked if they could afford a new laptop for her senior year. Her current one was 6 years old and took 20 minutes to boot up. Dad had said they needed to tighten the budget, yet that same week, they'd purchased a $300 orthopedic bed for Buddy because the trainer mentioned it might help with his hip development. The drive home was quiet. Emma had fallen asleep, exhausted from the excitement, and Buddy was finally calm. Maya's chest felt looser with the windows down, fresh air flowing through the car. These moments of peace were rare now. Even her bedroom wasn't safe anymore. Mom had started storing Buddy's supplies in Maya's closet because it was the most organized space, and Emma's room was too cluttered. Arriving home, Maya helped carry the sleeping Emma inside while Buddy bounded ahead, immediately claiming his spot on the couch where Maya's textbooks had been. She gathered her materials, noting how her highlighter had teeth marks in it, another Buddy casualty that would go unreplaced and unremarked upon. In her room, surrounded by boxes of dog toys and spare leashes, Maya sat at her cramped desk and opened her laptop. The screen flickered, a problem that was getting worse. She had 7 college applications to complete, each requiring essays, transcripts, and careful attention to detail. Her SAT scores were excellent, her GPA was nearly perfect, and she'd maintained a part-time job while volunteering at the local hospital. But none of that seemed to matter as much as whether Buddy had enough variety in his chew toys. Maya reached for her inhaler again, realizing she'd need a refill before the week ended. As she opened her SAT prep book, she could hear Emma downstairs, talking to Mom about Buddy's performance at training. Their voices were animated, full of pride and excitement. No one had asked about Maya's day, her college preparations, or whether she needed anything. The golden retriever had somehow become the golden child, and Maya was learning what it meant to be invisible in her own home. Maya's acceptance letter from Northwestern University lay open on the kitchen table, the partial scholarship details highlighted in yellow. She'd calculated the numbers a dozen times: tuition, room, board, books. The scholarship covered 60%, leaving $15,000 annually, exactly what her parents had saved in her college fund over the years. "We're so proud of you, honey," Dad said, glancing up from his coffee. "Northwestern is incredible." "And the research program?" Mom asked, refilling her mug. "I got selected for the Summer Biomedical Research Fellowship," Maya replied, trying to contain her excitement. "It's at the National Institutes of Health. If I excel, there's a strong chance for a full scholarship renewal for the remaining 3 years." This was her moment. Everything she'd worked for: the late nights, the perfect grades, the hospital volunteering, the SIT. Retakes until she scored in the 99th percentile. Finally, her family would see that she was worth investing in. "That's wonderful," Mom smiled. "We should celebrate." Emma burst through the front door, Buddy bounding beside her, both of them tracking mud across the freshly mopped floor. "Mom! Dad! Something's wrong with Buddy." Maya watched her parents' attention immediately shift, their faces changing from pride to concern in seconds. Emma was crying now, dramatic tears streaming down her cheeks as she explained how Buddy had been limping during their walk. "He's in pain. Look at how he's walking." Maya observed Buddy, who appeared to be walking normally, occasionally favoring his right rear leg. Hardly the emergency Emma was making it out to be, but her parents were already reaching for their phones. "I'll call Dr. Peterson," Dad said. "Should we take him to the emergency animal hospital?" Mom asked. Maya cleared her throat. "Maybe we should finish discussing." "Not now, Maya," Mom said sharply. "Can't you see this is important?" The next 2 hours dissolved into chaos. Dr. Peterson couldn't see Buddy until the following week, so they rushed to the emergency veterinary clinic. Maya stayed home, ostensibly to start dinner, but really because there wasn't room in the car with Emma, both parents, and Buddy's travel crate. She sat at the kitchen table, staring at her acceptance letter, feeling the familiar tightness in her chest that had nothing to do with asthma. They returned at 8 o'clock, Emma red-eyed but relieved. "Buddy has a genetic condition," she announced dramatically. "Hip dysplasia. The vet says it's common in golden retrievers, but he'll need surgery." Maya looked up from her calculus homework. "Is he in pain?" "Not really," Dad admitted. "It's more preventive. If we don't address it now, he could have arthritis later." "How much does the surgery cost?" Maya asked, though she already dreaded the answer. Her parents exchanged glances. $15,000, Mom said quietly. The number hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Maya felt something cold settle in her stomach. "But it's worth it," Emma continued. "Dr. Martinez says Buddy could live pain-free for another 10 years with the surgery. Without it, his quality of life might decline when he's older." "We'll find a way," Dad said, reaching over to scratch Buddy's ears. "He's family." Maya stared at them. "What about my college fund?" The silence stretched uncomfortably long. Finally, Mom spoke. "Honey, you're smart. You'll figure out student loans. Or maybe you could defer for a year and work." "Defer?" Maya's voice cracked. "I got into Northwestern. I got the research fellowship. This is my future." And Buddy's surgery is his future, Emma said defensively. He didn't ask to have bad hips. I didn't ask to be born into this family either, Maya snapped, immediately regretting the words. Dad's expression hardened. That's enough, Maya. You're being selfish. Buddy is a living creature who depends on us. You're 17 years old. You have options. He doesn't. She can get loans, Mom added. Lots of students do. Or community college first, then transfer. There are ways. Maya looked around the table at her family, her parents who'd rather saddle her with debt than let a dog risk arthritis in his old age, her sister who was already planning Buddy's post-surgery care routine, and Buddy himself, blissfully unaware that he'd just stolen her future. What about the research fellowship? Maya asked quietly. I can't defer that. It's now or never. Emma's face crumpled. You want Buddy to suffer just so you can go to some fancy school? It's not some fancy school, Maya said, but her voice lacked conviction. She was already losing this battle, had probably lost it the moment Emma walked through the door with her tears and dramatics. We've made our decision, Dad said firmly. Buddy gets the surgery. You're smart enough to find another way. Maya nodded slowly, understanding with perfect clarity that in her family's hierarchy of priorities, she ranked somewhere below a dog's potential future joint pain. That night, as she listened to her parents researching the best post-surgical care for Buddy, Maya opened her laptop and began researching something else entirely: how to become financially independent at 17. Maya's composition notebook became her battle plan, hidden beneath textbooks and filled with meticulous calculations. She'd always been methodical, but now her analytical skills had a singular focus: escape. On the first page, she documented 2 years of family spending on Buddy. The numbers were staggering when laid out chronologically. $2,400 for training classes, $1,920 for organic food, $2,880 for grooming, $800 for toys and accessories, $600 for the orthopedic bed, $1,500 for routine veterinary care, and $400 for professional photography sessions of Emma and Buddy. Nearly $10,500 spent on a dog while Maya's inhaler copays had tripled and her laptop barely functioned. She photographed receipts left carelessly on the kitchen counter, documented conversations about Buddy's needs, and noted every time her own requirements were deemed less urgent. The evidence painted a clear picture. Her family had chosen their priorities, and she wasn't among them. The second phase was financial planning. Maya increased her shifts at the medical supply warehouse from 15 to 30 hours per week, telling her parents she wanted to contribute to the family while secretly funneling every dollar into a new checking account at a different bank. Her guidance counselor, Mrs. Chen, had helped her apply for 7 additional scholarships after learning about the college fund situation. This is unconscionable, Mrs. Chen had said, shaking her head. You're one of our top students. There has to be another way. Maya had simply smiled and requested extra financial aid forms. There was another way. She just couldn't tell anyone what it was yet. She researched Northwestern's payment plans, student loan options, and work-study programs. The biomedical research fellowship included a modest stipend, and she'd already contacted the program director about increasing her responsibilities for additional compensation. Dr. Sarah Kim had been impressed by Maya's initiative and had connections with paid research opportunities during the school year. The third phase was the most delicate: securing housing and cutting ties. Maya's childhood friend Jessica attended Northwestern and had agreed to let Maya stay in her apartment temporarily until dorm arrangements could be finalized. Maya told her parents she was visiting colleges during spring break when she was actually meeting with financial aid officers and finalizing her independence plan. She opened a post office box for correspondence and gradually redirected her important mail: her social security card, birth certificate, and passport were quietly relocated to a safe deposit box she'd rented with her own money. The bank required a parent's signature for minors, but Maya had learned that emancipated minors could sign for themselves, and she'd begun researching emancipation procedures. The fourth phase was emotional preparation. Maya started seeing the school counselor, Ms. Rodriguez, under the guise of college stress. During these sessions, she processed years of feeling invisible, of having her needs consistently minimized, of watching a pet receive more consideration than she did. "It sounds like you feel unvalued in your family," Ms. Rodriguez had observed during one session. Maya had nodded, surprising herself by not crying. "I feel like a tenant in my own home, like I'm paying rent with good behavior and perfect grades, but they can evict me whenever something more important comes along." And Buddy represents something more important? "Buddy represents their real priorities," Maya had replied. "Everything else is just pretense." Through these conversations, Maya realized her plan wasn't revenge, it was self-preservation. She was saving herself from a lifetime of being second class in her own family. The letter took weeks to write. Maya drafted, revised, and refined it until every word carried maximum impact. She didn't want to sound vindictive or childish. She wanted to sound like exactly what she was, a young woman who had finally understood her worth and refused to accept less. She documented specific incidents. The time her emergency inhaler prescription was delayed because Emma needed to rush Buddy to the groomer before a photo shoot. The family vacation canceled because Buddy couldn't be boarded, while Maya's National Honor Society convention, which she'd worked toward for 3 years, was dismissed as optional. The college fund meeting that lasted 10 minutes before being derailed by Buddy's limp. Maya explained her financial plan, her acceptance to Northwestern, and her decision to pursue independence. She made it clear this wasn't a tantrum or a negotiation. It was an adult making a logical decision based on demonstrated family values. The final phase was timing. Buddy's surgery was scheduled for April 15th. Maya chose April 14th as her departure date. The night before, her family would demonstrate their priorities in the most expensive way possible. She accepted Northwestern's admission, confirmed her fellowship, and arranged student loans for the balance. Her bank account held $3,200 from months of extended shifts. Her academic records were transferred to her personal custody. Her few precious belongings, photo albums, awards, the jewelry from her grandmother, were packed in 2 suitcases hidden in Jessica's car. Maya had learned something valuable about family. It wasn't defined by blood relations or shared DNA. It was defined by who showed up, who invested, who made sacrifices for your dreams instead of asking you to sacrifice them. Her biological family had chosen their priorities. Now, she would choose hers. On April 13th, Maya placed the letter in an envelope addressed to "the family that chose a dog over their daughter," and set it on her pillow. Tomorrow, she would become someone else's problem to love properly. Maya left at 6 a.m. on April 14th, while her family slept peacefully before Buddy's big day. She took only her essentials: clothes, laptop, important documents, and the small wooden jewelry box her grandmother had given her. Everything else, the awards, the honor roll certificates, the family photos where she smiled dutifully, stayed behind like artifacts of a previous life. The letter waited on her perfectly made bed, propped against her pillow like a final report card. Jessica picked her up at the corner, both girls quiet during the 3-hour drive to Northwestern. Maya's phone buzzed once around 9 a.m., a text from Mom asking if she could pick up Buddy's post-surgery medications. Maya turned the phone off. At 2 p.m., while Buddy was in recovery, and her family was probably celebrating in the veterinary waiting room, Maya was meeting with Northwestern's financial aid office, finalizing her student loan paperwork, and signing her dormitory contract. Her phone had 17 missed calls when she finally turned it back on that evening. The voicemails played like a symphony of escalating emotions. The first few were confused. Maya, where are you? Buddy's surgery went perfectly, but we can't find you anywhere. Then concerned. Maya, this isn't funny. Call us back immediately. We're worried sick. Then angry. Maya Elizabeth Thompson, you get home right now. This is ridiculous. You're being completely dramatic over nothing. The final voicemail from Dad at 11 p.m. was different. Maya, we found your letter. We need to talk. This isn't what we meant to happen. Please call us. She deleted all 17 messages without responding. The letter had done its work. In precise, devastating language, Maya had laid out 2 years of documentation, dates, dollar amounts, and incidents where Buddy's needs superseded hers. She'd calculated that her family had spent more on the dog's comfort in 2 years than they'd ever spent on her medical needs, academic supplies, or extracurricular activities combined. The most damaging paragraph detailed the college fund meeting. In less than 10 minutes, you collectively decided that preventing a dog's potential future arthritis was worth more than your daughter's immediate educational opportunities. You offered me debt and suggested I delay my dreams, while simultaneously planning to buy Buddy a companion dog for his recovery. I finally understand where I rank in this family's priorities. Maya had concluded with clinical precision. I am removing myself from an environment where I am consistently undervalued. I will be attending Northwestern University in the fall, with or without your support. Consider this my graduation from needing your approval. By Wednesday, the fallout had spread beyond their household. Maya's Aunt Sarah called her parents after receiving a forwarded copy of the letter from Maya's cousin. Are you absolutely insane? Sarah had apparently screamed at Mom, according to Emma's tearful phone calls to her friends, calls that Maya's former classmates reported back to her. You spent her college fund on a dog? What is wrong with you people? Mrs. Chen, Maya's guidance counselor, called the house on Thursday requesting a meeting about Maya's transcripts and asking pointed questions about family support for college-bound students. The conversation reportedly went poorly, with Dad becoming defensive and Mom crying. Emma was struggling most visibly. Her Instagram posts shifted from celebratory photos of Buddy's successful surgery to increasingly desperate messages about family loyalty and overreactions. Her friends started asking uncomfortable questions about why Maya had really left, and Emma couldn't provide answers that didn't make her family look terrible. Maya's being selfish, Emma told anyone who would listen, but her voice lacked conviction. Deep down, she was beginning to understand that maybe Maya had a point. The social pressure intensified when Maya's story reached their extended network. Church members asked awkward questions about Maya's absence. Family friends offered congratulations on Maya's Northwestern acceptance, then looked confused when told about the funding situation. Mr. Peterson, their neighbor and a Northwestern alumnus, stopped Dad in the driveway for what witnesses described as a heated conversation about educational priorities and family values. That girl worked harder than any student I've ever seen, Mr. Peterson had said loudly enough for several neighbors to hear. And you spent her future on a dog? What's wrong with you? Even Buddy seemed to sense the tension. His post-surgery recovery, which should have been a time of family bonding and relief, was overshadowed by Maya's absence and the growing realization that maybe their priorities had been catastrophically misaligned. By Friday, exactly 1 week after Maya's departure, her parents were facing an uncomfortable truth. Their community was judging them, Emma was questioning everything, and their responsible, independent daughter had proven just how independent she could be. Maya's phone continued buzzing with calls and texts, but she was already 3 hours away, attending freshman orientation sessions and building the life her family had inadvertently taught her she would have to create alone. 3 months later, Maya was thriving in ways that would have seemed impossible in April. Her Northwestern dorm room was small but hers. No dog supplies cluttering the closet, No muddy paw prints on her textbooks. No wheezing episodes from allergens she couldn't escape. Her inhaler lasted the full month now, her academic supplies remained intact, and her research fellowship had exceeded every expectation. Dr. Kim had become both a mentor and advocate, recommending Maya for additional paid research opportunities and connecting her with graduate students who needed tutoring help. Maya's careful documentation skills, honed from years of tracking family expenses, made her invaluable in the lab. Her work ethic, sharpened by years of being ignored unless she excelled, impressed professors who began discussing early admission to their graduate programs. Meanwhile, her family was discovering the true cost of their choices. Buddy's recovery had been complicated by an infection that required additional surgery and extended veterinary care. The bills, which had started at $15,000, now totaled nearly $23,000. Dad had taken out a second mortgage to cover the expenses, while Mom had returned to work part-time for the first time in 8 years. Emma was struggling academically and emotionally. Without Maya's quiet help with homework and the stable family dynamic she'd unknowingly depended on, her grades had plummeted from B's to D's. She'd started therapy after having panic attacks about Maya, hating her forever. The breakthrough came when Emma found Maya's old journals while cleaning out the room that had been converted back from dog supply storage. Page after page detailed years of feeling invisible, unwanted, and undervalued. Maya had written about birthday parties where Buddy received more gifts, about family conversations that stopped when she entered rooms, about feeling like a guest in her own home. One entry, dated 6 months before Maya left, was particularly devastating. I scored a 1540 on the SAT today. I ran home to tell them, so excited I could barely breathe. Mom was clipping Buddy's nails and said, "That's nice, honey," without looking up. Emma was teaching Buddy a new trick and didn't acknowledge me at all. Dad was researching organic dog treats online. I stood there for 10 minutes, holding my score report, waiting for someone to care. No one did. I finally went to my room and celebrated alone. I think that's when I realized I'm already living alone in this house. Emma brought the journal to her parents with tears streaming down her face. "We did this," she said simply. "We made her invisible." The same week, Maya's name appeared in Northwestern's newsletter, highlighting her research contributions and academic achievements. Dr. Martinez, Buddy's veterinarian, mentioned it during a follow-up appointment, having recognized the family name. "Your daughter is making quite a name for herself," he said proudly. "My colleague at Northwestern says she's one of the most promising undergraduate researchers they've seen in years." The irony wasn't lost on any of them. Maya was succeeding spectacularly while they struggled with the consequences of their choices. The final blow came from an unexpected source, Maya's former math teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, who encountered Dad at the grocery store. Maya had been her student aide and had often stayed after school to help with filing when she couldn't go home due to her allergies acting up. "I always wondered why Maya spent so much time at school," Mrs. Rodriguez said conversationally. "She was such a dedicated student, but she seemed almost reluctant to leave. Like she was more comfortable in my classroom than at home." When Dad didn't respond, she continued, "I heard about her success at Northwestern. You must be so proud. Though I have to ask, what was that situation with her college fund? Some parents have been talking, and honestly, it's been difficult to understand how a family could prioritize a pet over their child's education." Dad's face flushed red. "It wasn't that simple, wasn't it?" Mrs. Rodriguez asked gently. "Maya worked harder than any student I've taught in 25 years. She deserved better support from the people who were supposed to love her most." That evening, the family sat in their living room. Buddy sprawled on his expensive orthopedic bed, Emma clutching Maya's journal, and their parents finally confronting the magnitude of their failure. "We destroyed our relationship with Maya for a dog," Mom said quietly, the words hanging heavy in the air. She tried to tell us, Emma whispered. For 2 years, she tried to show us what we were doing. We didn't listen. Dad looked at the framed photo of Maya's high school graduation on the mantel, a photo where she stood alone because they'd been busy getting Buddy into position for family pictures that day. She doesn't even have our contact information anymore. Her guidance counselor said all her mail goes to a P.O. box now. They had spent $23,000 trying to prevent a dog from developing arthritis in his old age, while their daughter had developed the emotional arthritis of feeling unloved in her youth. The surgery had been successful, but their family was broken in ways that no amount of money could repair. Maya's success wasn't just personal achievement, it was proof that their priorities had been catastrophically wrong, and that she was better off without them. 4 years passed like pages turning in a book Maya no longer shared with her family. She graduated summa cum laude from Northwestern with dual degrees in biomedical engineering and chemistry. Her research on targeted drug delivery systems earned recognition from the National Science Foundation, and she'd been accepted to Stanford's PhD program with a full fellowship that included a generous living stipend. Maya had built the life she'd always dreamed of, surrounded by professors who valued her intellect, friends who appreciated her dry humor, and a boyfriend who thought her ambition was inspiring rather than inconvenient. She lived in a bright apartment with plants she could actually keep alive, owned a reliable car she'd purchased herself, and had savings accounts with steadily growing balances. Through mutual friends from high school, she learned fragments about her family's struggles. Dad had taken early retirement to manage the financial strain from Buddy's medical bills, which had eventually totaled over $30,000 when complications required a third surgery. Mom worked full-time now at a job she disliked. Emma had barely graduated high school and was attending community college while living at home, still haunted by guilt over Maya's departure. The family had tried therapy for several months, but it had ended when the therapist suggested that Emma's depression and anxiety might be linked to unresolved guilt about her role in Maya's estrangement. Emma couldn't handle the suggestion that she bore responsibility, and her parents couldn't handle the implication that they'd failed so fundamentally. Maya processed her own emotions through counseling at Northwestern's Student Health Center, where Dr. Jennifer Walsh helped her understand that loving her family didn't require accepting their treatment of her. She learned to mourn the family she'd wished for while celebrating the chosen family she'd found among friends, mentors, and colleagues who valued her. Emma had written dozens of letters over the years, letters she never sent, found crumpled in her wastebasket by parents who were slowly learning to read the emotional landscape they'd ignored for so long. In those letters, Emma acknowledged Maya's intelligence, apologized for taking her for granted, and admitted that she'd known, even then, that Buddy was receiving attention and resources that Maya deserved. The family's social circle had never fully recovered from the scandal of the college fund incident. At neighborhood gatherings, their friends still asked about Maya's achievements, having followed her success through social media and local news coverage of her research awards. Each congratulation felt like a reminder of what they'd lost. Buddy lived to age 12, ultimately developing the arthritis they'd tried so desperately to prevent. The expensive surgeries had bought him perhaps 2 additional comfortable years, while the emotional surgery their family needed remained unperformed. The invitation arrived on Maya's Stanford graduation day. Thick cardstock with elegant script announcing Emma's engagement to her longtime boyfriend, Michael. The ceremony would be held at their childhood church, with a reception at the country club where Maya had once won a science fair that no one attended because Buddy had an ear infection. Maya stared at the invitation for a long time, remembering the sister who used to sneak into her room during thunderstorms, who had once defended her against playground bullies, who had been her best friend before becoming her replacement. The RSVP card asked for a response by June 15th. Maya set it aside and continued packing for her move to California, where she would begin her doctoral research in a lab that had recruited her specifically for her innovative thinking and collaborative spirit. On June 14th, she wrote a short note on elegant stationery. Congratulations on your engagement. I wish you both happiness and a marriage built on mutual respect and shared priorities. I will not be attending, but I hope your wedding day is everything you've dreamed of. She signed it simply Maya and mailed it without a return address. That evening, Maya called Dr. Walsh for what would be their final session. I think I'm finally free, she said, looking out her apartment window at the sunset painting the Chicago skyline in shades of gold and crimson. How does that feel? Dr. Walsh asked. Maya smiled, feeling lighter than she had in years. Like coming home to myself. The family that had taught her she was expendable had inadvertently taught her she was invaluable, just not to them. That lesson, painful as it was, had become the foundation of a life built on self-worth, authentic relationships, and the unshakable knowledge that she deserved better than settling for people who saw her as optional. Maya Thompson had learned to love herself enough to leave, and in leaving, she had found everything she'd been looking for.